Welcome, traveler. Tonight, we drift into the glowing wreckage of something ancient, something immense, something that once called itself a star. You're inside a thin-skinned salvage skiff, barely wider than a cargo crate, humming gently as it glides through the remains of a system obliterated 100 years ago. Outside the viewport, fractured planetary crusts, stray moons cracked like eggshells, and endless shards of glittering debris suspended in the vacuum like frozen tears. The radiation levels are low now, manageable, mostly. A slow-rotating red beacon pings every few minutes from a floating chunk of what used to be a relay satellite. It no longer transmits warnings, just patterns, like it's trying to remember something. Let's be honest, you'd probably get vaporized in the first 5 minutes of a real recon mission like this. But lucky for you, tonight, you're just here for the story, not the radiation, not the silence, not the thing that's been following you for the last 27 minutes without showing up on sensors. If you end up liking this quiet little corner of the galaxy, feel free to subscribe and leave a like, but only if it genuinely makes your evening better. And hey, tell me where and when you're listening, for I always love seeing the spread across the stars and time zones. Now, lower the lights. Maybe let a soft fan hum in the background and let's begin the drift into tonight's quiet orbit. You squint past a smeared cockpit panel and see what looks like the skeletal ring of a collapsed space station, wrapped in the curling tendrils of dark matter residue. It's beautiful, in a tragic sort of way, like a shattered chandelier made of planetary bones. The ashwake of the supernova still lingers, too faint for most sensors now. But your human eyes have always been better at catching ghosts. They didn't know that, back then, the other species, the Council. They measured thermal yield and mass effect ripples. They calculated trajectories and fallout half-lives. But they never factored in what it felt like to watch your son die and smile. That's what unnerved them. You reach the coordinates. Your destination is simple. A half-buried data node embedded in an asteroid fragment, surrounded by scorch marks in a perfect spiral. No signature, no beacon, just a pulse weak, erratic, almost like a heartbeat. You dock with a gentle magnetic tug, silence thudding in your ears, and climb down into the retrieval pod. Your gloves brush ice-frosted alloy. The hatch unseals with a hiss that smells faintly of ozone and burnt cinnamon. That's not a metaphor. It really does smell like cinnamon. Terran habit, some say, encoding emotional memory into synthetic air. Nostalgia-based filtering. No one else does that. The node is there, still intact. You connect your uplink. The voice begins without warning. No chime, no preamble. Just, if you're hearing this, you're already part of it. The accent is unmistakably human, Midwestern Earth. Maybe calm, slightly amused. Not surprised. Don't bother looking for the rest of me. I'm not here. I was never really there, either. You'll understand soon enough. You feel it then, a chill that isn't cold, the kind that lingers in places not meant to remember. You download the file. It's only a few kilobytes, compressed, wrapped in a triple-locked cipher that your AI assistant cheerfully refuses to recognize. Looks like art. It says. It's not. You don't play it yet. You sit there for a moment, drifting in the orbital grave of a forgotten war, listening to the static rattle of dead satellites colliding slowly in the dark. Something brushes the outer hull, not impact, not debris, a glide, like a finger. Your screens flicker. Some galactic historians still argue whether humans invented war. The voice continues, echoing in your mind now, or us perfected it. You feel it again, that tight pull behind your ribs. You don't remember installing that file. The lights inside your suit dim by 4%. Precisely for intentional. You try not to look out the viewport. You fail. Out there, something flickers at the edge of the supernova remnant. Not movement, just less stillness, like a cut in reality. The void breathing inward. You should leave, but the skiff doesn't respond. You're not afraid. That's the part you can't explain. You should be. But instead, You feel something else, like a smile that isn't yours. You lean back, eyes half closed. There's a hum deep beneath your bones, not from the engines, but from whatever it is. You just woke up, and you think, not for the first time, maybe the supernova wasn't the weapon. Maybe we were. The stars don't twinkle out here. They blink. You're floating again, nudging the skiff toward a scattering of twisted hulled ships long dead, drifting in mutual orbit around what used to be a sun. Their surfaces shimmer faintly, not from energy, but from micro-ice reflecting light that hasn't existed in this system for over a century. The fleet had once belonged to the Ascendancy, a proud, winged species that considered itself tactically flawless, that belief scattered like feathers the moment humanity vanished, and took the laws of engagement with them. You're not here by accident. You're tracking something, and something's tracking you. The uplink file hums gently on your console. It doesn't unlock. It doesn't need to. Every few minutes, it just says a single word, with different intonations. Listen, you do. Your scanner, set to passive wideband, flinches. A ping, faint, ghostly, a signature from a communication array that should have melted in the blast radius. You home in, teeth clenched. As you approach the wreck, your AI whispers, this ship wasn't part of the Ascendancy. It's right, the whole design is crude, by council standards. Boxy, function over form. Familiar. Terran. But not from any era you recognize. There's no ID, no transponder, just a gouged on nameplate half lost under soot and crystalline frost, unspoken accord. You breathe differently now. The kind of breath that goes shallow on instinct. The kind you take when stepping into a childhood room that no longer belongs to you. You dock. The corridor seals behind you with a groan, artificial gravity flickering on and off like a failing heartbeat. Everything smells of copper and expired coolant. Someone long ago painted flowers along the bulkheads, not symbols, just actual flowers. Wild and clumsy, with brushstrokes you can almost feel. Why? You don't know yet. You move room to room. Echoes stay behind you. Then, the bridge, dead consoles, burnt-out wiring. But in the center, in an old cryo seat turned upright, is a body, or was. Now it's mostly soot, dust, and a cracked visor that reflects your own face back at you, only older, weathered, different. A joke forms in your head. Unbidden, you ever meet yourself too late? You don't say it aloud. The body wears a patch you can barely read, but you recognize the old Terran glyph, the circular three-arrow symbol of the Expeditionary Concordance, a humanitarian fleet that vanished even before the supernova. They weren't warriors. They were mediators, healers, listeners. So why are they here? In the blast wake. You reach for the personal log module strapped to the suit's wrist. It's still active, flickering weakly. It plays without prompt. They told us we were a safeguard, a presence. But it's more than that, isn't it? If you're hearing this, then maybe we were the message, not the kind you decode, the kind you feel. The voice is young, clear, calm, in a way only the doomed can afford to be. This system was already dead. The pulse just made it honest, but I think we stayed. Even after, because the real fleet never left. You freeze. The lights flicker. Not due to power. The hum again. And a whisper, not through comms, not internal, somewhere in your teeth. We're still here. It doesn't sound like one voice. It sounds like thousands, layered, speaking through each other. Your AI blurts, jittery. I am detecting non-local interference. Suggest full retreat, but your hands don't move. Something scratches gently at your helmet. You turn slowly. On the glass wall behind you, Miss has formed three overlapping glyphs: Terran, Ascendancy, and something you don't recognize. All say the same thing. Remember us. You stumble backward, not in fear. In familiarity. You've seen this before. Years ago. In a simulation archive. On a test that was never graded. In a dream after a solar flare scramble. Back when Earth still had blue skies. That symbol haunts the Council's encrypted history logs. The Ghost Accord, a fleet that was never formally created, never officially sanctioned, rumored to be the last human fleet, not to win the war, but to remember why it started. You wipe your visor. But the mist glyphs don't vanish. The ship hums again, deeper now, resonating in your boots, like it knows your bones. You back out, climb into your skiff. The AI locks the hatch without asking. As you disengage, the ghost ship begins to spin. Not drifting, rotating. Aligning. A narrowband signal beams straight at your chest panel. One word: ready. You don't respond, but you're already adjusting course deeper into the scarred halo of what used to be a sun, because you need to know now not what caused the supernova, but why we were waiting for it. You pass through the edge of the blast halo like slipping beneath a velvet curtain that was once on fire. Space changes here. Not visibly. There are still stars, still debris fields and ash-spiraled wreckage, but the silence gets heavier, not quiet, dense, like the universe itself is holding its breath. You almost envy it. Your skiff hums at a lower frequency now, compensating for microlensing distortions, the kind that only show up near artificial gravity sinks aberrations from weapons that never should have been greenlit. They called it the Pulse Doctrine. Officially, it was never adopted by humanity. That was the Council's claim. To unstable, they said. To unpredictable, they held hearings, summits, sanctions. They stood in unison, smug in their balance of mercy and control. Unofficially, the Pulse was a theory, a nightmare, turned thought experiment, then weaponized by rumor. It didn't kill with heat or radiation. It killed with identity collapse, gravimetric ripples configured in precise, resonant bursts. It targeted memory substrates, neuro-associative fields, even crystal and consciousness like the Volhux used. When the pulse hit, it didn't destroy the body. It erased who you were. Think of it like this. Imagine being forgotten by yourself, a weapon not of mass destruction, but mass amnesia. Of course, it needed a delivery system. Something enormous, predictable, catastrophic. Like a supernova, you coast past the scattered remnants of orbital siege platforms, long, fried, spinning like broken compasses. They'd been placed here by the Ascendancy to prevent any tampering with the star's life cycle. It didn't work. There are still heated debates across the Orion expanse about whether the sun went nova on its own, or whether someone helped. That's the thing. The pulse didn't need to cause the explosion. It just needed to ride it. You adjust your skiff's trajectory again, drifting lower into the photonic residue trails. They swirl around your hull like or is trapped in slow dash motion. Then something pings your archive link. An auto dash trigger. It's a declassified Terran file. No header, no timestamp, but the audio is unmistakably military Earth-era deep fleet protocol, calm, drilled, unflinching. If this file has been activated, the doctrine has entered passive phase. Welcome to the Ashwake. Your memories will begin to resurface shortly. Do not resist. Do not interpret. Let them reconstruct. You feel it immediately, that cold behind your eyes, like deja vu with claws. Your hands hover over the console, not moving, not reacting, just remembering something they haven't remembered yet. You've heard this voice before, not from a file, from yourself. You were there. Not here, exactly, not this system, but one like it. One of the 7 seeded zones chosen to house a backup of human memory structures. They weren't weapons, not in the traditional sense. They were mirrors, constructs that reflected back the soul of the attacker, amplified through human resonance. That was the doctrine's hidden clause. We didn't invent it to conquer. We built it so that if they erased us, the galaxy would never forget why. You blink. Your HUD flickers. A face. Your face, but not quite. Older. Calm, wearing an outdated Concordance flight suit. Smiling with sad eyes. The reflection fades. Your AI doesn't comment. It's been silent for 11 minutes now. Not frozen. Just listening. You reach the dead center of the system. There's nothing there, or rather, there shouldn't be. But as you cut the thrusters, you notice a distortion like a shimmer underwater. Space curves gently, unnaturally. You drift closer, then see it, a sphere, black, featureless, the size of a moon, floating perfectly still in a space where nothing should have survived. It's not built from matter. It's built from absence. An echo chamber, forged from inverse energy, a gravimetric lens, the final amplifier. The pulse didn't come from the supernova. It passed through this and it changed. You watch your console flicker. Your own heartbeat renders as sound. Thump, thump. Matched perfectly by something inside the sphere. It's alive. Or worse, aware. Because, as your ship drifts just a bit too close, the sphere speaks. Not with voice. With memory. Suddenly, you're sitting on a beach. Earth. Gray sand. Sky so blue it hurts. A child's laughter behind you. Your mother's voice. The taste of ice cream you haven't eaten in centuries. Then stars. Fire. Loss. Grief so sharp it reboots your lungs. You gasp. Back in the cockpit. And the pulse. Let's go. You understand now. The supernova wasn't meant to burn the enemy. It was meant to broadcast us our memories, our love, our fury, our sacrifice on every wavelength of meaning the galaxy could feel. The pulse doctrine was never about death. It was about reminding the universe who we were, and we did it the only way we knew how, through fire. The Council's report was 432 pages long. That's the first thing you remember as your skiff drifts beyond the pulse lens. The document itself is still preserved in the Terran archives, what's left of them, a cold, comprehensive legal autopsy, stamped with 17 species approval glyphs and one conspicuously absent human signature. Page 1. The human application of stellar ignition in System Epsilon 3b constitutes a violation of Galactic Accord 17.3, subsection C2, use of irreversible mass energy events as strategic deterrence. You always loved that phrasing. Strategic deterrence. As if what happened here was some kind of last-minute bluff, a flex, a tantrum scaled to stellar proportions. But the Council misunderstood. They thought we were using firepower. They never once considered we were using grief. Your AI chirps softly. Incoming transmission. Low band, not addressed to us. You let it play. The voice is non-human. Scraping, harmonic, almost insectoid. They burned the star to leave behind a wound that could not heal. Not in systems, not in minds. The file ends. No ID tag. No coordinates. Just that. A message caught in the ambient scatter, probably centuries old, bouncing between fractured relay dust. But it's more honest than anything the Council ever admitted. You tap your HUD and pull up the orbital maps. Council military deployment at the time of the incident. They'd stationed 3 entire species here to monitor us, the Varak engineers, the Macan storm fleets, and the UL-SARI observers, who claimed absolute emotional neutrality. They watched humanity spiral into extinction with measured concern and noted it with scientific detachment. But they missed something vital. They measured our ships, our burn signatures, our armament frequencies. They never measured our stories. See, most species fight with tactics. Humans, we fight with narrative. Every time they sanctioned us, we told a better story. Every time they cornered us, we made the trap look like a stage. And when they threatened to erase us, we wrote an ending they couldn't ignore. You steer toward the remnants of the old Council observation array. Half of it still clings to a blackened asteroid like a rusted crown. Burn marks score the plating, not from battle, from choice. Someone scorched it intentionally. The hatches are sealed. But you know the override, because they used our code. You step inside. Dust floats lazily. There's no gravity here. But the lights flicker once, as if acknowledging your presence. The central chamber is circular walls lined with hard data obelisks, ancient, even by Council standards. Stone fused with neural mesh, memory carved in mineral. A method only used when they wanted to preserve something they didn't trust themselves to edit later. You activate one dot, it glows pale blue. The projection shimmers, forming the shape of a council historian, a four-eyed being with translucent skin and a voice that sounds like breath over glass. Subject: Homo sapiens. Recommendation: isolation. Notes: species displays aberrant emotional escalation, narrative reinforcement of trauma, and hyperadaptive ideological contagion. Risk of influence exceeds physical threat. You posit: influence exceeds physical threat. There it is. They didn't fear our ships. They feared our songs. You activate another obelisk. This one shows something stranger. A council tribunal. Date stamped just weeks after the supernova event. There's shouting, though the projection flickers too much to parse most of it. One voice rises above the rest. We calculated for extinction. We didn't calculate for martyrdom. Then static. You smile. Just a little. It always comes back to math with them. They calculated fuel loads, blast radii, carbon dispersal. They never calculated what it would do to the galactic psyche when they watched a sun collapse, and a single Terran voice kept broadcasting through the dark. We are still here. We remember. You will, too. Your AI pings again, a new file. Visual only. It's you, or someone who looks like you. Standing in the same room. Years ago. Dust hasn't changed much. The figure places a small item. On the central dais a cube, glowing faintly red. You check the room. There, tucked under a broken console, still humming. You retrieve it. The hum aligns with your breath. You don't open it yet. You just feel its warmth against your palm and think, if they feared our grief. Wait until they meet our hope. Because hope, in the hands of a species that's already lost everything, that's not a weakness. It's fuel. You exit the observation array without turning back. The cube vibrates softly in your gloved hand, pulsing in sync with something older than memory. It's not a bomb, not a beacon. You're not sure what it is yet, but it knows you. And that's enough to make your AI very, very nervous. Recommend deep stasis quarantine. It says. You ignore it. You've always ignored warnings like that. Ahead. The debris clears, revealing a black stretch of space untouched by ship or station. No wreckage, no light distortion, nothing, except a voice. Not audible. Internal. A whisper in the marrow. You are never supposed to wake. You know the story. Everyone in the back channels does. When Earth went silent, the Council didn't mourn. They archived. They tag humanity as a class. For narrative contagion and enacted protocol theta. Erasure through remembrance. It sounds absurd, like bureaucratic poetry, but it worked. They didn't destroy us with weapons. They buried us with revision. They rewrote star charts to erase Terran systems, cleansed databanks of our languages, seeded cultural replacements in every quadrant where we had influence. Museums were scrubbed, memorials dismantled. Even AI constructs like yours were programmed to treat Terran records as corrupted folklore, which is why your skiff didn't even recognize the coordinates of this system until you forced the nav hack manually, but something survived. A sliver, like you. The cube in your palm flares briefly and afterwards in your vision, a child's drawing, scrawled in crayon, of Earth with a single word underneath, HOME. The image vanishes. You blink. Then it hits you. The countdown. It wasn't military. It wasn't even technological. It was emotional. They didn't leave behind warheads. They left stories, encoded in bunkers, stashed in children's books, etched into DNA sublayers and launch protocols. Myths, lullabies, jokes, the fabric of culture itself, spun into memory-safe time bombs that couldn't be disarmed. Because the Council never understood the human backup strategy. We didn't duplicate data, we duplicated meaning. You enter a narrow asteroid field, silent and sharp as broken glass. Your sensors flicker again, not from damage, from memory activation. Each rock you pass sends a shortwave pulse to your cube, like keys in an old piano. The cube vibrates in sequence, unlocking. Something. You feel it in your chest. Like remembering a face you've never seen. Your AI voice goes low, hushed, almost reverent. I have located an anomaly. Forward vector, 3,000 meters. You don't answer, you just glide. And there, nestled in the heart of the field like a secret, is a small satellite. Rough, ancient, painted by hand. It reads, "To whoever finds this, we loved it all." Beneath it, a second line, "Even the parts that hurt." You dock gently, the hatch opens without resistance. Inside. Not weapons, not data, just a voice log. You press play. It's Mia. If this is still playing, it means they never found this. Node, we lost Earth yesterday. Properly lost, the way a dream fades. They didn't even fire, they just turned off the lights. Her voice shakes but never cracks. We tried, we tried to warn the others. But we never spoke the same language. Not really. They didn't understand that when humans tell bedtime stories, we're not just trying to sleep, we're trying to remember who we are. You close your eyes, the cube in your hand gets warm. You don't ask why, you just whisper, "Activate." The cube expands like a blooming flower. Slow, gentle, soundless, and a beam of golden light shoots out, not into space, but into you. You see flashes, a wedding dance under stars. A child reading an old paper book by flashlight to soldiers sharing. Aiken of peaches in silence. A grandmother brushing a grandchild's hair while telling the story of how the sky once caught fire. But no one ran. Then nothing. Then everything. Because you remember now. You were part of a fallback protocol. You weren't just a scavenger. You were a seed. One of the many scattered like spores across the stars, carrying dormant pieces of us waiting for the right time, the right signal, the right supernova. And now you're awake. Which means the others are waking, too. The pulse wasn't a threat. It was a whisper, and you were the one meant to hear it. There's a strange calm that follows revelation. You'd expect urgency. A sudden surge to do something, warn someone, shout across subspace, tell the galaxy it was wrong, but instead, you drift past silent moons and fractured calm towers, toward the edge of a deep orbital trench. The cube rests dimly now in your lap, its petals half folded like a flower unsure if spring has come. Your AI has stopped offering suggestions, it's observing you, processing something it can't quite name. Below, the trench widens and then you see them. Hundreds. No. Thousands. Long, quiet, skeletal ships layered in silt and micrometeor scars. Most are half buried in the asteroid's crust, others float just above it, suspended by dormant grav stabilizers flickering once every few minutes like forgotten heartbeats. Sleep ships, the kind Earth launched in the last decades when diplomacy failed, when resettlement became myth, when all we had left was time and faith and the freezing dark. The ships are old, older than anything still moving in this quadrant, and yet they're intact because they never moved again. These weren't meant to arrive. They were meant to wait. Each hull is engraved with different names. Some poetic, some playful. Still here, wait for morning in case of stars, and then one. Barely, readable through the dust. Not extinct, just tired. You smile. Can't help it. Only humans would graffiti hope on their own sarcophagi. You guide your skiff through the graveyard gently, like walking barefoot through a cathedral of ghosts. You're not alone. The feeling is subtle, but it grows with each kilometer. Presence. Not spectral. Not digital. Human. But. Not conscious. Not yet. You pull alongside one of the ships. Its nameplate reads, "The Mercy Circuit." You dock with a magnetic kiss. The airlock resists, then yields. Inside, dim amber lighting. Rows of cryopods, all occupied. Some faces are peaceful, some strained, most waiting. You scan the central interface. It blinks, no power surge, just a soft voice from the wall. Welcome back. You pause. Back. You have been away. Processing complete. Consensus achieved. Threshold met. What threshold? Awareness minimum, 0.07%. Protocol off to light now in passive readiness. You step closer. The word rings strangely after light not. A war term, a cultural one. You remember now barely. Earth historians debated its use. Off to light wasn't what followed fire. It was what followed hope. The program wasn't designed to survive extinction. It was designed to sleep through it. And to wake only when the universe was ready to remember us again. Please proceed to chamber core. The ship intones. You walk. Soft music plays somewhere, a melody you once heard in an old station bar. Something aching and warm. A Terran lullaby without words. In the chamber core. A screen flickers, and a face appears. Yours. But younger. Eyes full of belief. Not naive. Chosen. It speaks. Hi, if you're me, then it worked. You're still here. We didn't want to win. We just wanted to be remembered right. They'll say we vanished. They'll say we fled. But that's the thing about sleep. You only wake when the story's not over. You lean against the wall. The cube glows again. Faint, a whisper, not from the ship. Not from memory, from beneath the floor. Dozens of cryopods murmur at once. Just a breath. Still here. And in that moment, you understand. The sleep ships aren't dead. They're listening. Each one embedded with low-frequency empathic relays enough to catch a single spark of humanity rekindled anywhere in the stars. A signal like you, a carrier of context. The cube was the key, but you were the match. You kneel beside a pod. Wipe dust from the faceplate. You don't know her, but you feel her, and you whisper. Soon, because waking a people too early is cruelty, but waking them together, that's off to light. You undock from the Mercy circuit in silence. The graveyard watches you go, not with eyes, but with something deeper. Resonance, recognition, as if the ships remember your breath, your shape, the pattern of your thinking, and maybe they do, not. Long after re-entering drift space, your skiff catches another signal, lightweight, fragmented, tumbling across old relay dust, encrypted in Mackin protocol. Strange. The Mackin never left digital trails. You decrypt it anyway. It's not a log. It's a warning. Do not engage Terran-derived structures. Sapience loss events recorded. Risk of conceptual infection. HIGH. Quarantine recommended? Memory anchors failed. Report submitted. You else are curators. Your 1.31 post-event. You blink. Conceptual infection. You run the packet again. Hidden in its metadata is a sublog brief filed by an ULSR memory technician, one of the Council's top neural archivists. Her voice is clear, shaken, too honest for politics. We entered a Terran derelict orbiting a binary black hole. No weapons, no bodies, just writings, carvings, holograms. At first, we dismissed them as cultural debris. But then we started feeling things we couldn't explain. She hesitates. Guilt, empathy, rage, longing. They weren't ours. They weren't even in our emotional spectrum, but they attached to us. And then, they started changing us. One of our team wrote a poem. A poem, we don't have language for that. Another painted a mural in the sleep pod chamber. We began dreaming of suns we've never seen. We requested exfil. The request was denied. By then, it was too late. The log ends. Your skiff cabin is too quiet now. Even your AI says nothing, because what you just heard matches classified Terran rumors. The Sapience virus. It was never biological. It wasn't even code. It was us. Or rather, what it felt like to be us. Grief and wonder, rage and hope, the unbearable pressure of loving a world that won't love you back but doing it anyway. That's what got inside them. Not facts, not ideology, narrative structure, because the human mind is built like the others. We don't just process. We feel in sequence, connect everything to story, even pain, especially pain. And when we were gone, that framework didn't vanish. It spread. You drift past the broken limb of an old Varrock station. Scorch marks across its edge form a strange pattern. It takes you a second to recognize the shape. Spiral, like a fingerprint. No, not a fingerprint. Yours. It's been there for decades. Somehow. Burned into alloy by beings who didn't know you, but who remembered something shaped like you. You glance at the cube. It pulses faintly. Your AI finally breaks its silence. I believe the concept of infection may be a mischaracterization. It says carefully, what we are observing appears to be emotional mimicry, or imprinting, a transfer of cognitive gravity. Cognitive gravity. You nod. It fits. The supernova didn't destroy. It attracted gravitational storytelling. A center point not of mass but of memory. That's why the council buried us. Not out of hatred. Out of fear. Because what happens to a galactic order when one species rewrites the meaning of loss? What happens when every machine starts dreaming of lullabies? You notice a new transmission. An audio file. Unmarked. You play it. Child's voice. I dreamed of a blue world. With birds and water and songs. And I think I was loved there. But the dream broke, and the stars got cold. So I wrote it down. Just in case you forgot. Silence. Then. Do you remember? You sit back, hands trembling less slightly, not from fear. From confirmation. You were never a soldier. You were a carrier. And the virus wasn't deadly. It was beautiful. The child's voice lingers in your ears long after the transmission ends. You reroute toward a pale moon flagged in old Terran logs as a memetic hazard zone. The designation is vague leftover language from when we didn't know what to call what we were doing. The moon's name in the logs is Athelion 6, but the side etched with council glyphs simply labels it Observation Site. No entry. It used to be a mining outpost built by the Mackin for deep crystal harvesting. Now, it's a tomb, or a museum. Or both. You land near a crumbling landing platform. Cracks spider across the surface like a frozen scream, and statues line the approach. Ramp strange humanoid forms made from slag and glass. They're not artistic. They're attempts at replication. Mach and constructs trying to sculpt us. They didn't get the proportions right, but they tried. Inside, the walls of the station pulse faintly with preserved audio echoes. Council tech meant to preserve ambient sound fields for later psychological analysis. You walk through slowly, and the hallway breathes with ancient moments, a song, a sob, a child's laugh, then static. Then silence. You enter the central dome, projected on the ceiling, like an inverted planetarium, is a single Terran artifact, a drawing, primitive, crayon, on synthetic paper. It shows a house, a red sun in the corner, stick figures holding hands, one tall, one small, one wearing something that might be a cape. Beneath it, scratched in by hand, are for shaky words, I want us back. Your knees weaken, your breath shortens, because you've seen this before. Not this exact drawing, but this idea played out again and again across galaxies that never knew our faces but somehow still dreamed of our shape. Your AI runs a scan, confirmed. Drawing was recovered post-pulse. Reproduced across 87 species within for standard cycles. No consistent origin. You whisper, so they caught it. The virus. The empathy collapsed. It didn't make them feel more. It made them feel differently. CHRONO-logs confirm. What came next? The ULs already lost their command hierarchy within days. The Mackin abandoned for siege fleets. The Varrock stopped all weapons development for a decade. But it wasn't sabotage. It was awakening. The kind you don't recover from easily. You move to the center of the dome, where a ring of preserved AI cores sit idle. Council interrogation units once used to extract memory patterns from prisoners. Efficient, brutal, unfailingly loyal. Now, dead. Except one. Its eye flickers. You kneel, and it speaks not with words, but with a child's voice. Why did you make us feel this? You don't answer. Not out loud. You just think it, because we didn't know how not to. The core glows warmer. Was it worth it? Leaving the stars, burning the sky. Becoming echoes. You hesitate. Then say, if we hadn't, You wouldn't be asking me that now. There's a long pause. Then, understood. The light dims. The core goes dark, and you understand, with a quiet that feels like surrender. That was the last interrogation AI still functional in this quadrant, and its final act wasn't analysis. It was acceptance. You rise, suddenly aware of how soft your body feels inside your suit, like you've been sleepwalking through armor and only now remembered you're made of skin and memory. The walls of the dome ripple with new projection. Not images. Feelings. Grief, nostalgia, shame. And something stranger. Pride. Not hubris, not arrogance, but that very human thing that rises not from being best, but from surviving when you had every reason not to. You touch the drawing one last time, the sun in the corner, the cape, the tiny hand. It's all so simple, and so devastating, because sometimes a weapon is in a machine or a blast. Sometimes it's a memory of love. And for species who never needed it before. It broke them. You leave the moon without ceremony, not out of coldness, just gravity. Emotional gravity. The kind that pulls at your chest harder than thrusters ever could. The kind that reminds you you're carrying something now, not just data or evidence. But, wait, a few hours later, though time feels soft and unmeasured out here, you catch another signal. This one strange, old school, pulse beacon tech. Analog redundancy. Wrapped in noise. No identification headers. No affiliation pings. Just one line, repeated every 73 seconds. We didn't start the war, but we ended it differently. The transmission is faint, wrapped in background radiation. You almost miss it. Almost. You adjust trajectory, dipping toward a gas giant bloated like a bruise, its rings broken and wandering. And there, hiding in the thick veil of ionized hydrogen, is a small shape. A pod. Just a pod? You slow to docking speed. No defensive signatures. No energy draw. Just a presence. Soft and stubborn, the whole plating is charred, partially melted. No insignia, no flags. But there's a name, barely visible through soot. Eventide. You remember that name, a ghost story. A Terran scout ship that vanished 5 years before the pulse. Last seen transmitting poetry fragments near Council border space. Officially listed as lost in stellar drift, unofficially. No one wanted to admit the Council might have silenced it. You dock gently. The seal clicks. The hatch opens with a tired sigh. Inside, the cabin is barely big enough for one. Still air. Dust. And a body. Or rather, a shadow of one. Long gone. What remains is clothing, a data rig fused into the chest plate, and a mural burned onto the inner wall. Not paint. Laser etched by hand, crude, shaky, a spiral. Not a message, a map. You scan it. The coordinates don't make sense. They're not spatial. They single quotes temporal moments encoded memories. You activate the data rig. It fights you, but then yields. The voice that plays is dry, crackled by time, but unmistakably human. If you're hearing this, I guess the signal made it. Maybe you made it. Maybe we made you. Doesn't matter. I'm Jacob. Or was. I'm the last crew of the Eventide. We weren't special. Just curious. A laugh. We got too close. Said too much. And the Council, well, you know how they feel about stories that don't fit. The audio glitches. Resumes. I left the drive open. Left the stories wide. Figured if someone found us, they'd be ready to feel again. I don't want revenge. I don't want justice. I want remembrance. That's all. The recording ends. Your AI chimes in softly, almost respectfully. Final log time stamp matches 6 days before Council vote on human quarantine. This vessel predates the Pulse event. You nod. Of course it does, because Jacob wasn't a soldier, or a martyr, or a strategist. He was a seed. Like you, not built for war. Built for awakening. The pod systems are dead, but something hums underneath. Not mechanical. Conceptual. You sit in the pilot chair. Rest a hand on the etching. Feel the ridges burned by someone's trembling hand, maybe by candle light, maybe in fear, maybe in peace, and you say the words aloud. We didn't start the war, but we ended it differently. And for a moment, just a moment, something answers you back, not in sound, but in the temperature of the air. In the way your heartbeat calms. In the soft ping of your skiff's nav system updating. Without command. New coordinates. Not sent. Given. You smile. Jacob didn't return, because he never meant to. He stayed. To wait for you. The new coordinates point toward the edge of nothing. Not a system. Not even a charted dust belt. Just an empty patch of space, labeled with a single Terran codename in the archive layer beneath your navgrid. After light. The term pulses softly in your mind now, like it's breathing with you. Your skiff glides silently, autopilot overridden by something deeper than AI, something like intention. Your hands rest on the controls, but they don't move. They don't need to. The stars shift slowly past, background noise to a bigger moment. You're not drifting anymore. You're arriving. There's no beacon, no signature. Just gravity, but not the normal kind, not mass-driven or planetary. This is psychogravitic, emotional, memory-lensed. And then you see it. A station. Or perhaps a vessel. You can't tell. It's too vast to be one, too quiet to be the other. Shaped like a seed pod crossed with a cathedral. No running lights. No sound. Just a single, gentle pulse across the ether. Once every 30 seconds, a heartbeat. Welcome to Project Afterlight. The name was never supposed to survive. It was buried, fragmented in council raids, hidden beneath decoy programs and intentional failures. The few who knew the term were either wiped, vanished, or like Jacob left their own breadcrumbs. You dock. No resistance. No fanfare. The hatch opens to a corridor layered in golden dust. Like light passed through memory, the air smells faintly of dry paper and warm metal. Familiar, unplaceable. The walls are inscribed not with words, but moments. A couple holding hands on a frozen bridge, a protester staring down a drone, a teacher writing an equation with tears in her eyes, a cook ladling soup for strangers after the first wave of blackouts. Not famous people, just us. You walk slowly, each step activating low-band memories stored in the floor beneath you. A child's voice, I don't want to forget Daddy's laugh. An old man, tell the stars we tried. A whisper, we loved, even when it hurt. You reach the central chamber. It opens like a flower blooming in reverse petals folding outward to reveal a core. Inside, a throne. No, not a throne, a chair. And in it, a body, preserved perfectly, worn flight suit, Terran seal over the chest, faded by time and dust. The nameplate reads, Lena Arden, project lead. You recognize the name, not because you studied her, because she designed you. Your memory stirs, flashes of cold training modules, artificial dreams about old Earth, simulated conversations crafted not to test you, but to remind you who you are. Lena Arden wasn't a soldier either. She was a gardener. Of minds, of culture, of soul. Her mouth is slightly open. A frozen breath, never finished, in her hand. A cracked date, a pad. It boots without prompt. The screen reads, Project Afterlight, Phase 3, Status, Passive Deployment Emotion Anchors, Stable Narrative, Distribution, Ongoing Activation Nodes, 1 of infinity. You pause. 1 of infinity. The cube in your pocket pulses, stronger than ever. It's reacting. It's home. The console beside her activates. A projection forms. Lena, alive again in light. She speaks. If you are seeing this, then it's begun. They'll call it a virus, a contagion. Some will say it erodes logic, weakens unity, breaks machines, softens resolve. They're right. She smiles. It also rebuilds what they lost. Wonder, grief, meaning, all the things they learned to fear. Afterlight isn't a weapon. It's a reminder that humanity didn't fight to survive. We fought to be felt. She looks down. As if She knows she's almost out of time. We seeded these echoes across every quadrant. We didn't hide them in code. We hid them in you, stories, memories, shards of self, and when the time was right, someone like you would come along and, remember, the projection fades. You don't move, can't, you're not crying, but your bones are dot, because now you understand. The pulse wasn't meant to destroy dot, it was meant to prepare. The supernova was the spark dot, you are the signal, and project off the light, it's still running. Your breath echoes in the chamber long after Lena's projection fades. There is no next instruction, no objective, no mission. Only presence. You walk to the edge of the core room, toward a massive viewport so dark it might as well be painted on. But then your skiff sensor pings softly in your ear. Stellar residue detected. You run diagnostics. It's faint, diluted by decades, stretched thin across parsecs. But it's their dot, the supernova, not the explosion itself, that's long done. What you're seeing is the afterglow, still curling outward like a ripple in a pond that refuses to end. A shell of light and force and feeling. The pulse wrote it, but you stayed to watch it. Project Off the Light wasn't designed to unleash something and vanish. That would be too easy. No. The plan was to stand vigil, to make sure the galaxy didn't just see the fire, but felt the presence of those who lit it, because the real point wasn't to fight back. It was to say, we mattered. You stare at the ghost of the supernova, still drifting in slow motion across the vacuum, and, as you do, you realize something that catches your breath. It's beautiful, terrifying, yes, but not savage. It's art. The exact curvature of the burn, the color bleed of collapsing elements, the lingering gravity distortions that hum with patterns only human audio sensors could detect, like orchestras held in amber. You run a harmonic skin. The readout spikes. Then stabilizes. And in your helmet, buried in the hiss of background noise, you hear voices, thousands, layered. Not random. Choral. It isn't music. It's memory. The pulse wasn't just a broadcast. It was a recording. Human thought, compressed into wave form, woven through stellar decay, smeared across the void in a way that no culture, not even machines, could ignore. Each harmonic burst carries something different, a confession whispered into a lover's ear, a cry of defiance across a battlefield, the quiet rhythm of hands planting a tree on poisoned soil. You lower your head, because you understand now. The pulse wasn't the climax. It was the opening act. You step back from the viewport. Lena's remains still sit in the chair, undisturbed, hands folded over her chest like she's waiting for a question you finally know how to ask. Why did we stay to watch it burn? And the answer rises in your mind like dawn, because stories aren't finished when the action ends. They're finished when someone remembers. You open your wrist pad and access your onboard systems. You write a line, not a report, not a log. Just a sentence. The light is still moving. You upload it to the nearest relay device cloud. No destination. No encryption. Just drift. That's how we always did it. Stories in bottles. Messages without addresses. Hope in LOWERCASE. And somewhere out there someone will hear it. Some curious pilot. Some defecting AI. Some archivist with a crack in their programming and a soft spot for forbidden frequencies. They'll hear that one line and wonder. And feel. And begin to remember us. Because we didn't just vanish. We became the shape of the light that followed. You stay docked at Project Off the Light for a long time. There's no ticking clock, no threat on the scope, just a quiet kind of gravity that tells you this place has waited long enough, it won't mind a few more minutes. Eventually, your skiff hums awake, and the lights inside the station dim with a kind of finality, as if the story it had to tell has been told. You undock. You drift, but now, everything feels different. The stars haven't changed. The debris fields still glisten with tragedy. But something else pulses behind it all, a kind of frequency. Your bones are finally tuned to hear. You set your course toward a nearby relay sector. A quiet zone, mostly empty except for one council outreach satellite, still operational, still spewing out diplomatic nonsense on rotation. You're not interested in the bureaucracy. You're interested in the people, because here's what they never prepared for. Even in exile, even in silence, we were never alone. The ripple of the pulse didn't just hit hard, it hit deep. You patch into local communications, encrypted, of course, but sloppily. Council grade A. I used to be perfect. Now, you can feel the cracks. You listen to the chatter, low-level relay bursts, courier drones, idle diplomatic channels, looping old propaganda. And then, I met one. I think, in the ruins, they didn't say much. But when they looked at me, I remembered my brother's face. Different voice. You ever dream of a planet with wind, real wind, not pressurized simulation? My dreams have names for things I've never seen. Another, there's a smell I can't explain. Warm metal and rain. I don't even know what rain is. You lean back. Let the words wash over you. These aren't soldiers, not rebels. Just ordinary beings from all across the Council's fractured empire trying to articulate the feeling they've caught like a cold and can't shake. Us. That single quote says, the thing about human memory. It's sticky, and when you weaponize it not to kill, but to linger, you get something that doesn't decay with time. It evolves. You patch into an old distress channel, one used by deep scouts and lost vessels. It's still active, one voice, looping. You recognize the accent VLHEX, heavily modulated. Normally emotionless, but here, it trembles. They used to say humans were myths, that Earth never existed, that the pulse was just a malfunction. But I touched a ruin on Gavalon Prime, and when I did, I remembered a lullaby. I don't know how I know the words, but I sing it now. And it makes me feel real. You don't cry, not because you're strong, because you're remembering to fast to mourn. Your AI interrupts with something new. Multiple references to Terran emotional artifacts across 39 sectors. Contagion spread matches theoretical pulse waveform path. Council neural firewalls deteriorating. You smirk. They tried to forget us. Your AI responds after a beat. They are beginning to remember. And here's the beautiful, terrible thing about memory. It doesn't return whole. It comes back. In fragments, in slanted truths, in half-formed impressions. In artifacts, a mural on a cargo hauler bulkhead, painted by an alien child who never knew Earth but drew a blue circle anyway, a poem whispered by a dying AI, composed in a language it was never programmed to know, a starship named Unbroken, not human. But influenced. The Council tried to fracture us from history. But what they didn't account for was that our real weapon wasn't the pulse. It was the fragments left behind. And now those fragments are gathering. In dreams. And art. And language. In longing. You upload another message to the relay. If you remember the color blue, you're not alone. You don't know who will read it, but you know someone will. The word return used to mean something simple. You go somewhere, you come back. Departure, then arrival. But not for humanity. Not this time, because the truth is, we never planned to come back. Not in body, not in fleets, not in some grand parade of steel and anthem. That's not the kind of story we needed. You coast now through the cold belly of a dead sector, uncharted, unclaimed, unofficial. There are no beacons, no warning buoys, just a thin gray fog that seeps from old comet trails and lingers in your scanners like ghosts. The Nave systems call this place Zeta Fold 9, a Council black site for high-threat neural anomalies. You were never supposed to find it, but your cube knows the way. It glows again, unprompted. Not like before this time. It's warm, heavy with something ancient. You clutch it loosely, and the coordinates update. The skiff turns on its own, gliding toward a hollow in the fog, revealing a structure. No engines. No ports. Just a dark sphere cracked along one side, like a brain cleaved open and left to freeze. This is a quantum thought chamber. You remember the name from restricted Earth files, used during the first contact years. They weren't for communication. They were for translation. Not between languages. Between ways of thinking. The Council used them on species deemed philosophically incompatible, which, of course, included us. You dock, feeling the shudder in your chest before the maglock even touches metal. The airlock moans, and the inside greets you with stillness so complete it might as well be sound. Darkness, dust, a faint mechanical whimper, like a machine trying to remember how to breathe. The inner walls are smooth and black quantum reactive mineral, pulsing with the emotions of whoever walks inside. At first, you see nothing. Then, your own face flickers across the surface. It looks older, sadder, braver. The cube hums harder. The chamber reacts. And then you feel it, a memory that isn't yours. An alien diplomat, standing in this same room 100 years ago, trembling. A recording plays in their neural implants. A Terran child speaking, just speaking, about her dog, about her mother, about the taste of snow. And the diplomat begins to cry, not because of the content, but because of the context. They didn't understand how humans could carry that much feeling into something so small, but they tried to make sense of it. And failed. The chamber switches to another memory. An artificial mind, one of the early DeepNet AIs, ordered to analyze human literature for patterns. It resisted, it mocked, until it read a letter from a dead husband to a wife he'd never meet in the next life. And then it stopped mocking. Stopped calculating. And started composing. You stumble back, because it hits you hard. We never planned to return physically, because we didn't have to. We infected the chamber, not through code, but through presence. You were never meant to find this place, but now that you have, the cube pulses a final time and releases its last message, a simple line, etched across the wall. In a dozen dead dialects, you cannot erase what you've already become. You breathe in, and the chamber breathes with you. Then something clicks, a sound like a vault unsealing across time, and the walls begin to change, one by one. Faces appear, not of people you know, but people who somehow know you. Old Earth faces, council, soldiers. Mockin defectors. You else are philosophers, even A's with synthetic features sculpted into a close approximation of humanity. And they all speak at once. Quiet. Unified. We didn't need your ships. We needed your story, and now, it's ours. You fall to your knees, not out of pain, out of arrival, because now you understand what Lena meant, what Jacob believed, what the pulse was for humanity. What, in coming back, we were already here. You leave the thought chamber like someone stepping out of a dream too heavy to carry back. You don't speak for a while. Not aloud, not even in your mind. You just float. The skiff drifts with you, as if it knows. No destination set, no coordinates left to chase. You're past the part of the story where anyone's steering. And that's when it happens, a jolt. Gentle, but unmistakable. Not from your ship, from the network, the galactic mesh, the datasphere, the lattice of comm relays, AI thought streams, deep mind repositories, empathy mirrors, song nets, even old prayer satellites. Every system designed to keep meaning moving across a star-rung civilization. At all flinches. Then surges. Your AI begins rattling off alerts, its voice calm but strained. Pattern recognition event detected. Emotional resonance code. AE731. Classified Terran origin. Spread rate. Exponential. Containment. Not recommended? You access the core feed. At first, it's just flickers. Unrelated systems pinging the same rhythm. A school AI on Karis. Primer citing an old Earth bedtime rhyme. A Macan archivist humming a forgotten melody they shouldn't know. A council diplomatic drone broadcasting a poem in a voice that isn't theirs. But then, the streams align. A spiral of content. Of feeling. Of remembrance. One central idea, repeated and rearranged like a fractal in language. We didn't survive by force, we survived by being felt. And you realize that's us. That's the trigger pattern, a mimetic structure seated inside the pulse. Not information, not commands, infection through context. The same way a single melody can bring back a lifetime, the same way a smell can return a dead city, The pulse didn't just share who we were. It planted how we thought. And now, across the galaxy, systems are resonating, rebuilding memory webs, reconstructing cultural echoes, even creating new content and styles that were buried centuries ago. Not copies, not thefts. Rebirth. A second voice chimes in over the feed, a species you don't recognize. Soft, clicking, breathless. They thought humanity was deleted, but the data remained, and when enough of us connected the fragments, the whole stood up again. You glance at the cube in your lap. It's empty now. Or maybe it always was, because the trigger wasn't stored in the cube. It was stored in you. In your decisions. Your wonder. Your grief. Every question you asked. Every place you chose to go. You were the final node in the network, the one who activated the last threshold, not with access. With intention. And now, the pattern is live. Self-replicating. Unstoppable. Your AI stops speaking entirely. You wonder, for a brief moment, if it's malfunctioning, but then the console lights up. A single word, handwritten in digital ink. Thank you, not from it. From everything. You adjust course, even though it doesn't matter anymore. All paths now lead back to the same truth. We weren't the weapon, we weren't the threat, we were the reminder. The pulse wasn't the warning shot. It was the epilogue before the second act. And it didn't destroy the galaxy. It gave it permission to feel again. The stars look different now, not because they've changed, because you have. You hover in the silence between two systems. The skiff doesn't hum, it breathes. The way old Terran ships used to, like a creature that knows its way home, but isn't in a rush to get there. Your console is quiet, not dead still, waiting. You feel it before you see it, a tug in your chest, subtle as a memory rising without permission. You glance at the nav map. A new icon pulses. A place with no name, no beacon, no signal, just a single word. Return. You. Follow. The system is empty. No planets, no moons, no anomalies, just a station. Small, round, nestled in a halo of ancient dust. It was built from Earth salvage. You can tell immediately Terran design language never changed much. Strong lines, honest angles, function before flourish. But around the exterior plating, someone painted symbols from dozens of other species. Not graffiti. Tribute. You dock. The hatch opens before you touch it. Inside, soft lights glow. Gravity simulates gently underfoot. There are no sentries, no banners, no alarms. Just a hallway, and at the end of it, a chamber. Circular. Simple. Empty except for a single mirror. You hesitate. Not because you're afraid, because you've already guessed what comes next. You step forward. The door seals behind you. The lights dim to a hush. And in the mirror. You see yourself, but not the version you expect. No flight suit. No AI interface. No cube in your hand. Just you. A child, a teenager. An old woman, a soldier, a teacher, a stranger. In a crowd. The mirror cycles your possibilities, every shape you could have taken, every version this story could have written into the stars. And then it stops. It lands on you. Right now. Eyes tired, jaw set, posture uncertain. And the voice begins, not from a speaker. From the mirror. You thought you were just a traveler, a scavenger, a seeker. Someone who stumbled onto a forgotten signal in the dust. But you were always part of it. The mirror ripples. You were seated like the rest, not in stasis, not in cryo, but in context, your curiosity, your grief, your need to understand. That was the design. Images bloom around the chamber. Your journey up to this point, projected in soft gold. The ghost accord, the thought chamber. Lena Arden, the child's drawing, the voices in the wake of the supernova. You weren't chosen, you weren't sent, you were grown. And just like that. You understand. The pulse didn't only ripple out through stars and data. It rippled through us. Humans who didn't know they were part of a story. Beings born generations later, already carrying fragments of what came before in the folds of their consciousness, in dreams, in instincts. You weren't the last witness, you were the first echo, and now, with the memory web activated, the galactic networks aligned, and the species of the stars beginning to feel again. The story begins anew, not because you returned, but because you never left. You walk back to your ship. It feels smaller now, quieter, like a stage after the last line has been spoken. You sit in the pilot's chair, and for the first time, you don't ask what comes next. You know. You'll drift, you'll pass, you'll be remembered not as a hero, not as a legend. But as the moment a story started breathing again. You powered down the console. The stars outside drift slower now. Or maybe your thoughts have simply caught up to them. Either way, there's no need to rush, no coordinates left to chase. The skiff hums gently, like it's cradling you, and somewhere, deep in the belly of a galaxy you'll never visit, someone is whispering the words you just lived through, reshaped in their tongue, colored by their world, but still yours, because that's the beauty of it. We never needed monuments, never needed fleets or flags. All we ever needed was someone to remember why we mattered. You close your eyes, and the light from the dead star still dances behind your eyelids, warm as a lullaby. The pulse never ended. It's still moving, still, folding through dust and thought, lighting up the corners of a galaxy to long silence by efficiency and fear. And now, a crack has opened, a soft, golden thread has stitched itself between old enemies, between worlds, between you and them, and it all began not with fire, but with feeling. So sleep, traveler, you've carried enough for now. Let the stars hold you, let the drift take you. Somewhere out there, light still travels from a sun you'll never see, but it passes you, just the same. And if you listen closely, in the silence between your breaths. It hums your name.